The second time Iris Calloway left Owen Slade, she did it on a Sunday morning in April. She had been at his apartment on Pinckney Street for the weekend. The window in his bedroom faced east, and the Boston light came in early and clean, the way spring light does after a long New England winter, like something that had been held back for months and was finally, briefly, allowed. She watched him sleep for a few minutes. She had been doing this, watching him, cataloging him, memorizing the specific way he existed in the world. Since the first time they met, 4 years earlier, when he had been working on the restoration of a federal-style building in Beacon Hill, and she had walked past on her way to work and asked him what was wrong with the cornices. He had stopped what he was doing and told her, in detail, with evident pleasure. She had been late to her shift. Now she sat on the edge of his bed and looked at his face, the particular stillness of someone sleeping without any awareness that they are being watched, and felt the thing she always felt when she let herself feel it, the deep, specific certainty that this was right, that this was the person, that there was no version of her future she wanted that did not have Owen Slade somewhere in the frame. And then, because she was Iris Calloway, and she had done this before, she got up. She gathered her things quietly, her bag, her jacket, her phone from the nightstand, and she left. No note this time. The first time, 3 years ago. She had left a note, 2 pages, careful and honest, explaining things she wasn't sure she fully understood herself. He had kept the note. She knew because she had found it, 18 months later, when she came back. In a drawer in his desk, unfolded, like something he returned to. This time she did not write anything. She did not write. She walked across the common in the early morning, the city barely awake around her, and she told herself she had a reason. She had seen something the previous afternoon, something that had changed everything, and she was not running. She was responding to information. She told herself that for 3 blocks before she stopped believing it. She kept walking anyway. Iris Calloway had been a pediatric nurse for 9 years, and she was very good at it. She was good at it the way people are good at things that cost them something. Not effortlessly, but with the kind of earned competence that comes from showing up every day and caring more than the job description technically required. She remembered her patients' names between visits. She remembered their siblings' names, their fears, the specific stuffed animal each child needed in the room before a procedure. She was the nurse families asked for by name. She had always been better at other people's pain than her own. Her mother, Nora, said this gently and often. Iris, you'll drive to the hospital at 2 a.m. for a family you've met once, and you won't return a call from someone who loves you for 3 days. Iris always said she was busy. Nora always said that wasn't what she meant. She had met Owen the spring she turned 30. She had been coming out of a 2-year relationship that had ended quietly and without drama. The kind of ending that is almost worse than a fight because it doesn't give you anything clear to point to. She was not looking for anyone. She was walking to work and asking questions about cornices. Owen had answered with the full attention of someone who was genuinely interested in cornices, and also, she suspected later, in the woman asking about them. He was not flashy. He dressed like someone who worked with his hands, which he did. He spoke carefully and listened well, and had the particular quality of stillness that she associated with people who were not performing anything. She fell in love with him over the following 8 months, in the way you fall in love when you're trying not to, recognizing it too late to do anything but be in it. And then, because something in her always needed a door to stand near. She left. She called it needing space. She called it not being ready. She called it a lot of things that were true in the way that partial truths are true. And she moved through the next year with the specific restlessness of someone who has made a mistake and is not yet ready to name it. She did not date anyone for 14 months. Then she met Derek Voss at a colleague's dinner party, and he was easy in all the ways that felt, at first, like relief. Derek Voss was the kind of man who made sense on paper. He was organized and successful, a financial consultant with a corner office in a firm on State Street. The kind of place with a view of the harbor and a lobby that smelled like leather and climate control. He was consistent. He showed up when he said he would. He remembered her coffee order. He made reservations at restaurants she mentioned once and forgot she'd mentioned. For the first 6 months, this felt like being cared for. Iris did not immediately recognize the difference between being cared for and being managed. The difference is subtle at first. It lives in small things, the way he suggested gently that she call him before she made plans with friends, the way he mentioned once or twice that a particular colleague of hers seemed too familiar, the way dinner reservations somehow always required her to account for where she had been that afternoon. She noticed these things. She filed them away in the part of herself that had learned, over years of nursing, to document inconsistencies without immediately acting on them. She waited to see if the pattern held. It held. But by the time she was certain of the pattern, Owen Slade had walked back into her life. He had not sought her out. She had run into him at the Harvard bookstore on a Saturday in November. She had been looking for something for her mother's birthday. He had been in the architecture section with a book about Beaux-Arts restoration tucked under his arm. And they had stood in the same aisle for a moment, recognizing each other, and neither of them had said anything for just long enough that saying anything became something more than small talk. They got coffee. They talked for 2 hours. When she got home, Derek was sitting in her living room with the particular stillness of someone who had been waiting long enough to have moved past patience into something cooler. "You were gone a long time," he said. "I ran into an old friend," she said. "Which friend?" She told him. The expression on his face changed in a way that was small and precise, and which she understood immediately. Not anger. Something more calculated than anger. "I see," he said. He picked up his phone and looked at it and said nothing else. Owen Slade was not waiting in the romantic sense. Not exactly. He was living. He was working. A 19th century townhouse in the South End that needed 3 years of careful attention. And he was giving it 3 years of careful attention. He was running the Charles River Esplanade on Sunday mornings. He was having dinner with his father in Gloucester on the occasional weekend, sitting in the kitchen of the house he had grown up in while Theo cooked something on the stove and talked about the things old men talk about when they have reached the age of saying exactly what they think. "She'll come back," Theo said once, stirring something on the stove without looking up. "I don't know that," Owen said. "No," Theo agreed. "But I do." Owen did not press him on this. His father had a particular relationship with certainty that had nothing to do with stubbornness. It came from having built and restored enough things over 70 years to understand the difference between something broken and something that needed time. The coffee shop at the Harvard bookstore was a coincidence. Owen had not planned it. He had been in the architecture section on a Saturday morning because he was looking for a specific monograph on federal-style entablatures, and they were the only bookstore in Boston likely to have it. He had not thought about the possibility of running into Iris when he saw her. He felt the thing he always felt when he saw her. A recognition that was not quite surprise and not quite anything else. Like a building he knew well, coming back into view after an absence. They talked for 2 hours, and it was effortless and uncomfortable in equal measure. Effortless because it was them, and uncomfortable because they both understood what they were navigating around. When they said goodbye on the sidewalk outside, she hugged him. Brief, careful. He stood on Massachusetts Avenue for a moment after she walked away and let himself feel the full specific weight of being in love with someone who was afraid of it. Then he went back inside and bought the monograph. He did not call her. He had learned the hard way after the first time she left that reaching toward Iris when she wasn't ready only confirmed the fear she was already carrying. She needed to find her own way to the door. Derek Voss was not a man who lost things he had decided to keep. After the Saturday at the bookstore, he spent 3 weeks watching Iris in the careful, methodical way he approached everything. Noting what changed in her, what lightened, what she reached for when she thought he wasn't paying attention. He was always paying attention. He knew about Owen. He had known since the night she told him, 18 months into their relationship, about the man she had been with before. She had framed it as a past thing, a closed chapter. Derek had listened with the patience of someone filing information rather than receiving it. He did not like that Owen Slade existed. He liked less that Iris's voice had a specific quality when she spoke about him. Something slightly warmer, slightly more alive. That Derek had never been able to produce, no matter how many reservations he made or coffee orders he remembered. So he built something. He had a colleague, a woman named Paige, who owed him a professional favor and who was willing, for reasons Derek made worth her while, to be seen in a certain way at a certain moment. He arranged for Iris to pass by Owen's office on a Friday afternoon when she would be coming from the hospital. He arranged for Paige to be leaving the building as Owen held the door. A natural, mundane moment that he calibrated to look from the right angle and the wrong context, like something it was not. Iris saw it from across the street. She stood at the corner of Columbus Avenue and watched Owen hold the door for a woman who was laughing at something. And the woman touched his arm in the way that people touch the arm of someone they know well. And Owen smiled. It was 12 seconds of completely ordinary human interaction. It was also the only piece of information Iris had, and Derek knew exactly what she would do with it. She had a pattern. He had studied her pattern. When Iris Calloway felt something that frightened her, she looked for a reason it wasn't real. He had handed her a reason wrapped in 12 seconds of curated ambiguity. She came home that evening quiet and careful, the way she got when she was processing something she hadn't decided how to handle yet. Derek poured wine and asked about her day. She said it was fine. He smiled. She left Owen that Sunday morning without leaving Derek. That was the part that took her longest to understand about herself. That what she had done was not a decision between two men. It was a retreat into the familiar weight of uncertainty. Derek was difficult in ways she could categorize. Owen was terrifying in ways she couldn't. And she had never learned how to sit with the unnameable kind of fear. She threw herself into work. Boston Children's was always there for this. Always full of things that needed her and children who did not ask her to be anything other than competent and present and kind. She worked double shifts. She took on extra cases. She came home exhausted and fell asleep quickly, which was the point. She did not contact Owen. She assumed he would reach out and then felt a complicated mix of relief and something sharper when he didn't. 3 weeks passed. Then a month. Then her mother called. Nora Calloway did not ask why Iris looked tired. She did not ask about Derek or Owen or anything directly connected to the reason her daughter was sitting at her kitchen table in Medford on a Wednesday evening, staring at her tea. She simply said, "Tell me what happened." Iris told her about the Friday afternoon, the corner of Columbus Avenue, the 12 seconds. Nora listened without moving. When Iris finished, Nora was quiet for a long time. "Did you ask him?" she said finally. "No." "Why not?" Iris looked at her tea. "Because I didn't want to be wrong about him." "You mean you didn't want to be wrong about what you thought you saw?" Nora said carefully. "Those are different things." Iris didn't answer. "Iris." Her mother's voice was very gentle and very direct in the way it had always been. The combination that Iris had never been able to argue with. "You have been afraid of Owen Slade for 4 years. Not because he's given you a reason, but because he hasn't. Because he is exactly what you want, and you have never figured out what to do when something is exactly what you want." The kitchen was quiet. A Starbucks cup sat on the counter, long cold from Nora's morning. "I don't know how to not be afraid," Iris said. "I know," her mother said. "That's why you keep leaving. But sweetheart, every time you leave, you're not protecting yourself." She paused. The truth arrived in the form of a stranger's conscience. Paige Merritt had spent 6 weeks telling herself it was a small thing. A moment on a sidewalk, a favor for someone she worked with, nothing that had caused any visible harm. She had not known the details. Derek had framed it as helping him surprise his girlfriend. Something to do with a misunderstanding he wanted to create and then resolve. She had not asked enough questions because she had not wanted to. Then she ran into Iris Calloway. It was at a hospital benefit at the Boston Harbor Hotel, a fundraiser for the pediatric wing where Iris worked. Paige was there with a colleague from her firm. They were introduced through a mutual contact, and Paige heard the name Iris Calloway and felt, with immediate and uncomfortable precision, that she knew that name. She placed it 40 minutes later. She found Iris near the window, overlooking the harbor, holding a glass of white wine and looking at the water with the specific expression of someone attending a party they are not entirely present at. Paige stood beside her for a moment. "I think I owe you something," she said. Iris turned. Paige told her, not everything. She didn't know everything, but she told her about Derek's request, the building on Columbus Avenue, the Friday afternoon, the 12 seconds she had been positioned to provide. She told her in the flat, factual tone of someone who has been rehearsing this and is getting it done before she loses her nerve. Iris listened without speaking. When Paige finished, she said, "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I should have asked more questions before I agreed," Paige said. "And because I think whatever happened as a result of that afternoon was not a small thing for you." A long silence. The harbor lights moved on the water below. "No," Iris said. "It was not." She set down her wine glass, thanked Paige for telling her, and walked directly to the coat check. She sat in her car in the hotel parking garage for 22 minutes. She thought about the 12 seconds she had built an entire decision around. She thought about Owen's face. She thought about Derek sitting in her living room, asking which friend she had spent the afternoon with, and the expression on his face when she told him. She thought about the note she had left the first time she walked away from Owen. 2 pages. Honest and careful. She took out her phone. She called Derek from the car. He answered on the second ring, which meant he had been expecting her call, which meant something she filed away. without dwelling on. She told him what she knew. She did not raise her voice. She was a nurse. She had delivered difficult information to families in crisis for 9 years, and she understood that emotion during a hard conversation is information. And she was not willing to give Derek any more information than she had to. He denied it initially, in the way people deny things when they believe the other person cannot prove what they know. Then she told him Paige's name. A pause. "That's not," he began. "Derek," she said. "Don't." Another pause. He didn't. She told him she would be at the apartment to collect her things the following morning and that she expected him to not be there when she arrived. She told him she was going to ask a friend to come with her. She told him this in the same tone she used to tell parents about procedures their children needed. Clear, calm, no room for negotiation. She hung up. She sat in the parking garage a little longer. The relief she felt surprised her, not because it was unexpected. She had known for months that Derek was not right. Had known in the particular way you know things you are not ready to act on. But because of its scale, it was enormous. It filled the car. It felt like something structural had been removed from her chest without her realizing how long she had been carrying it. She drove home. She did not sleep much. In the morning, her friend Yara from the hospital came with her to the apartment. Derek was not there. She gathered everything in 40 minutes. Yara carried 2 boxes down to the car and did not say much, which was exactly right. On the drive back to Iris's place, Yara said, "I never liked him." "I know," Iris said. "You knew I didn't like him." "Yes." "And you stayed anyway." "Yes," Iris said. Yara was quiet for a moment. Then, "Is this about Owen?" Iris looked at the road. "It's about me," she said. "Owen is a separate question." "He's not, though," Yara said. Iris did not argue. For 6 weeks after leaving Derek, Iris did not contact Owen. This was not avoidance. It was, for the first time, something closer to honesty. She understood that showing up at Owen's door immediately after the Paige revelation would be presenting herself as a woman who had been wronged by someone else. Which was true, but incomplete. The fuller truth was that she had used what she saw on Columbus Avenue as a reason to do what she was already afraid to stop doing. Leaving. She had left him twice. The first time out of fear. The second time because fear disguised itself as evidence. Neither of these were things she could simply apologize for and expect to be released from. She started therapy. Her therapist, a woman in Cambridge named Dr. Sorrell, had a particular gift for sitting with silence after Iris said something difficult. The first session, Iris described Owen in terms so precise and complete that Dr. Sorrell said simply, "You've thought about him a great deal." "Yes," Iris said. "And you've left him twice." "Yes." "Tell me what you were afraid of," Dr. Sorrell said. "Not what you told yourself you were afraid of. The thing underneath." Iris thought about it for a long time. "That he would eventually see me clearly," she said. "And that what he saw would not be enough." "And what does he actually see when he looks at you?" Dr. Sorrell asked. Iris didn't answer right away. She thought about Owen in the architecture section of the Harvard bookstore, with a monograph under his arm, taking her seriously about cornices on the first morning they met. She thought about the 2 pages she had left on his desk the first time she left. The careful honesty of it. The fact that she had not been able to leave without explaining herself, even though explanation was excruciating. She thought about finding the letter in his drawer 18 months later, unfolded like something he had returned to. I think he sees me as I actually am, she said slowly. And is that frightening? Dr. Sorrell asked. Yes, Iris said. Why? She sat with a question. Because if he sees me clearly and still chooses to be there, she said, then I have no more reasons to leave. And staying, really staying, is the only thing that has ever scared me more than losing him. Dr. Sorrell let that sit in the room. She drove to Gloucester on a Saturday in July. She had gotten Theo Slade's address from a mutual friend. A small dishonesty she permitted herself, because she did not know how to approach Owen yet, and she needed something to hold before she could. She needed to understand from someone who had known him longer than she had, whether what she was considering was fair to ask of him. Theo Slade's house was a white cape on a street 2 blocks from the harbor. It smelled like sawdust and salt air when he opened the door, which made sense because he had a workshop in the back where he still built things at 70. He looked at her for a moment. Iris Calloway, he said, not a question. I'm sorry to show up without calling, she said. No, you're not, he said. Come in. He made coffee, and they sat at the kitchen table where Owen must have sat 100 times. And Theo did not ask her why she was there because, she suspected, he already knew. He was the kind of man who already knew things. Is he all right? She asked. He's working, Theo said. The South End house, he's been at it for 3 years. He'll finish it this fall. And otherwise? Theo looked at his coffee. He's Owen. He gets up. He does the work. He doesn't complain. She nodded. Mr. Slade, she said. I left him twice. I want to ask him for a 3rd chance. I don't know if it's something I have the right to ask. Theo was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I built a cabinet once that took me 4 attempts to get right. First time the wood split, 2nd time the joinery failed, 3rd time I miscalculated the dimensions, 4th time I got it right. He looked at her. Nobody asks how many attempts a cabinet took. They just see whether it works. She looked at him. I'm not a cabinet, she said. No, he agreed. You're considerably more complicated, but the principle holds. He paused. My son has been patient because he understands that good things take time, and mistakes don't disqualify the outcome. What he won't wait for is someone who isn't trying. He looked at her steadily. Are you trying? Yes, she said. I am. For the first time, I actually am. She went to his apartment on Pinckney Street on a Thursday evening. She had not called ahead. She understood this was not ideal, but she had rehearsed the call 14 times and could not make herself dial. And she had decided that some things needed to be said in person or they would be said incorrectly. He answered the door in work clothes, worn canvas pants, a shirt with plaster dust on the cuff, and looked at her with the expression she recognized. Not surprise, not anger, but the careful composure of someone who has learned to wait before they feel things. Hi, she said. Hi, he said. A pause. Can I come in? She asked. He stepped back. She had not been in his apartment since the April morning she had left from it. It was the same. The drafting table by the window, the bookshelves along the east wall, the particular lamp he kept by the reading chair. His Kindle was on the side table with a mug. She sat in the chair across from the sofa. He sat on the sofa. She said what she had come to say. She told him about Paige. She told him about Derek. about the arrangement, about the 12 seconds on Columbus Avenue that she had used as evidence for a verdict she had already been afraid to overturn. She told him about Theo, that she had driven to Gloucester, that she hoped that was all right. She told him about the therapy and about the things she had finally said out loud to Dr. Sorrell. That what frightened her most was not losing him, but staying. She told him that she was not there to ask him to fix anything. She was there because she had spent 6 years being afraid of the clearest feelings she had ever had. And she needed him to know that she understood what she had done, and that she was sorry, and that the sorrow was specific and earned, and not asking for anything in return. When she finished, the apartment was very quiet. Owen looked at his hands for a moment. Then he got up and went to his desk. He opened the second drawer and took something out. He walked back and placed it on the coffee table between them. It was the letter. Her letter, 2 pages, carefully folded, worn at the edges from being opened and closed many times. She looked at it. "I read it when I'm missing context," he said quietly. "For what you are when you're not in the room." He did not say yes immediately. She had not expected him to. And the fact that he didn't was one of the things that confirmed, for her, that she was in the right room with the right person. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Okay," she said. "Is the thing you're afraid of still there? The fear of staying?" She thought about it, honestly. "Yes," she said. "Dr. Sorrell says it probably always will be. We're working on what I do with it instead of running." He nodded slowly. "I'm not asking you to not be afraid," he said. "I'm asking whether you're going to let the fear make decisions for you again." She looked at him. "I can't promise you I'll be perfect at this." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking for perfect. I've never needed you to be perfect." He paused. "What I need to know is whether this time is different because something happened to you, or because something changed in you." The distinction landed exactly where he intended it to. She sat with it. "Both," she said. "But the something that happened just gave me information I was missing. The change is mine. I went to therapy before I came here. I drove to Gloucester before I came here. I sat with this for 6 weeks without running to you and asking you to make it easier, because making it easier isn't what I needed to do." Owen looked at her. She continued. "I left you twice because I was afraid of what it would mean to stay. I'm here now because I'm more afraid of what it means to keep leaving. That's not the same as being unafraid, but it's different from before." A long silence. He looked at the letter on the table. Then at her. "There's a townhouse in the South End I've been working on for 3 years, he said. "Your father told me," she said. "I'm finishing it this fall." He paused. "I'd like you to see it when it's done, if you want to." She understood what he was asking. Not yet. "But the door's open. Walk through it at the right pace." "I'd like that," she said. He nodded. She picked up the letter from the table and held it out to him. He took it. Derek Voss moved through the aftermath the way he moved through everything, with control and a careful management of appearances. He told the people in his professional circle that the relationship had ended amicably, that they had wanted different things, that it was mutual. He told this story with the polished confidence of a man who has never had a narrative he couldn't manage. What he could not manage was Paige. Paige Merritt had not intended to become a problem. She had simply told the truth to a woman at a charity event and assumed that was the end of it. But Paige had also, in the process of telling Iris, mentioned the conversation to her direct supervisor, a senior partner who had a particular investment in the firm's ethical standards and who asked Paige, over the course of several conversations, for more detail. The more detail revealed a pattern. Paige was not the first person Derek had asked for this kind of favor. He had done versions of this before. Small arrangements, calibrated misrepresentations, situations designed to give him information or advantage in personal relationships with professional resources. His supervisor brought it to HR. HR brought it to the partners. Derek was placed on administrative leave while the firm conducted a review. The review was thorough and took 11 weeks. At the end of it, Derek resigned before the firm could complete the process, a calculation he made because he understood the outcome and wanted to control the optics. He left Boston. He moved to a firm in Philadelphia that did not know his history, because history travels slowly in financial consulting circles when you are careful. He was careful, but he was also, for the first time in many years, alone. Without the architecture of control he had built around his relationships. Without a person to manage, without the particular satisfaction of being the one who decided how things would go. He did not reflect on this deeply. He was not, fundamentally, a man who reflected, but on a quiet Thursday evening, in a new city, in a new apartment that smelled like fresh paint and contained nothing personal yet, he sat for a long time without turning on any lights. Nora Calloway noticed the change in her daughter the way mothers notice things. Not in single moments, but in accumulation. She noticed that Iris called more often, not with the performative regularity of someone maintaining a relationship, but with the easy frequency of someone who wanted to talk. She noticed that Iris laughed at smaller things and was less guarded about which things she said out loud. She noticed that the particular quality of exhaustion that had lived in her daughter's face for the better part of 3 years was gone. Not replaced by happiness exactly, but by something steadier. She asked about Owen once. Iris said, "We're taking it slowly." Nora did not ask follow-up questions. She had spent 34 years learning when her daughter needed to be asked questions and when she needed to be given room. And this was a room situation. She simply said, "Good." What Nora did not tell Iris, what she had never told Iris and had no intention of telling her now, was that she had spoken to Owen Slade. Once, briefly, 18 months after Iris's first leaving, when Nora had run into him at a farmer's market in Cambridge, and they had stood next to each other at a flower stand for a moment before either spoke. He had not asked about Iris. She had not offered anything. But as they parted, he had said, simply without any visible expectation of response, "She's going to be okay. I think she just needs more time than she thinks she needs." Nora had thought about that sentence for 18 months. She had thought about it again when Iris came back to his apartment after the first leaving. She had thought about it on the night Iris sat at her kitchen table and stared at cold Starbucks tea and said she didn't know how to not be afraid. And she thought about it now. Watching her daughter talk about taking things slowly with the voice of someone who, for the first time, was actually trying to move towards something rather than away from it. He had been right. She had simply needed more time than she thought she needed. Owen finished the townhouse in the South End in late October. It was an 1890s row house on Rutland Square. 4 stories, brick facade, original cornices that had survived a century of neglect by being too ornate for anyone to bother removing. He had spent 3 years on the interior, restoring the original plasterwork, relaying the heart pine floors, rebuilding the staircase banister from photographs of the original design. The kitchen was new, but spoke the same language as the rest of the house. Every room had its original proportions. He called Iris on a Thursday. She came on a Saturday morning, driving in from the North End, where she had recently moved, in the November light that came low and direct across the rooftops. He opened the door. She looked at the exterior first. She was Iris. She always looked at the exterior first. He watched her take in the restored cornices, the cleaned brick, the brass door hardware he had sourced from a salvage yard in Rhode Island. "The cornice detail," she said. "Federal style," he said. 1893. "I know," she said. "That was the first thing you ever told me." He smiled. She walked through every room. She did it the way she did everything that mattered to her. Slowly, paying attention, touching things to understand them. The plaster walls, the wide boards of the pine floor, the banister she ran her hand along. In the top floor room, with its view of the square below and the November light falling across the restored plasterwork, she turned around. "Owen," she said. "Yes." "This is the best thing I have ever seen you do." He looked at the room, the proportions, the light, the things he had put back that had been taken away. "It's the most time I've ever spent on anything," he said. She looked at him. "Is that why it worked?" she asked. "Partly," he said. "Also because I understood what it was supposed to be and didn't try to make it into something else." The sentence landed exactly where it was meant to land. She crossed the room and kissed him, not urgently, not with any of the anxiety that had characterized the previous version of them, but with the particular care of someone who finally understands the weight of what they're holding. He kissed her back. Outside, Rutland Square was doing its November thing. Bare branches, that particular Boston quiet that settles over old streets when the leaves are gone. Staying, Iris discovered, was not one decision. It was 100 small ones. It was choosing on the mornings when the old fear surfaced. And it did surface, Doctor. Sorel had been right about that. To name it rather than act on it. It was saying out loud to Owen, "I'm having one of those mornings." And having him say, "Okay, do you want to talk or do you want quiet?" And either answer being acceptable. It was not a perfect system. She was not a perfectly healed person. She had 3 years of avoidance patterns to work through, and a therapist she saw every 2 weeks, and a mother who called on Tuesdays and asked about nothing specific and everything important. But she was not running. She had moved to the North End in September. Her own apartment, her own lease, her own key. She was not moving into Owen's life. She was moving into her own life, adjacent to his, by choice and at her own speed. He understood this completely. He was an architect. He understood that structures need to be built in the right order or they fail. They had dinner twice a week. They spent Sunday mornings on the Esplanade when the weather held, which in Boston meant roughly 5 months of the year. He came to her apartment and cooked things that were better than anything she made. She came to his and read in the chair by the window while he worked at the drafting table. She told him, one evening, about the 36 seconds between seeing him and kissing him in the South End house. The moment she had stood there measuring the distance between them and decided, for the first time, to close it rather than increase it. 36 seconds is a long time, he said. It felt longer, she said. What were you thinking about? She considered the question honestly. That I would have been so afraid of you seeing me clearly, she said, and that you already did, and that nothing had fallen apart. He looked at her across the table. Nora Calloway met Owen Slade, officially as Iris's person, in November, at a dinner at Iris's apartment in the North End. Iris had cooked, which was ambitious but successful. Owen brought wine and a small pot of rosemary from a garden center in the South End because he knew Iris always killed her herbs, and he thought this one might survive if it arrived with better odds. Nora arrived with the expression she always wore when she was trying not to appear as invested as she was. She and Owen spent 20 minutes talking about the South End townhouse before dinner because Nora had been a school teacher for 30 years and knew a great deal about old buildings. And Owen was constitutionally incapable of having a surface conversation about architecture. Iris watched them from the kitchen and felt something she had no efficient word for: the particular fullness of a life coming into alignment after years of being slightly, persistently wrong. During dinner, Nora asked Owen how he had known to be patient. He thought about it. "My father," he said. "He always said the worst thing you can do with something worth having is rush it. The wood splits, the joints fail, the whole thing comes apart. Better to take the time and get it right." Nora looked at him for a moment. "I ran into you once," she said. "A farmer's market in Cambridge, about 4 years ago." Iris looked up. "I remember," Owen said. "You said she would be okay," Nora said. "That she just needed more time than she thought she needed." "Yes," he said. "Were you afraid that wasn't true?" Nora asked. A pause. "Sometimes," he said. "But mostly I knew her. I knew what she was capable of when she stopped being afraid of it. I was more afraid of the version of things where she never got the chance to find out." Nora picked up her wine glass. "Well," she said, "she found out." In January, Iris started writing, not for anyone else, not for publication, not for her therapist, though Dr. Sorrell had suggested it. For herself on Sunday mornings, in the early light of her North End apartment, with coffee that went cold while she was writing. She wrote about the cornices, the first morning, being late to her shift and not minding. She wrote about the 2-page letter and the way her hand had shaken writing it, and how she had known, even as she folded it, that it was not enough, that she was leaving more behind than the words could hold. She wrote about Derek. Not with anger, because anger required energy she preferred to spend elsewhere, but with the particular clarity of someone who can finally see a thing from far enough away to understand its actual shape. He had not been a mistake she made out of stupidity. He had been a mistake she made out of fear of the opposite of him. And that was a more honest accounting of it. She wrote about Gloucester and Theo's kitchen and the cabinet story. She wrote about the 36 seconds in the South End house. She wrote, "I have left and come back and left again and come back again. And every time I came back that the distance was different, not longer but more specific. I knew better what I was coming back for." I think that is not the worst way to learn something, though it is not the easiest. She wrote, "Owen kept my letter in his drawer. He read it when he needed to remember what I was. I need to become the kind of person he doesn't need the letter for anymore. I think I'm getting there." She wrote, "Staying is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to be afraid in place rather than afraid in motion. I am learning to be afraid in place. Some mornings it is easier than others. Most mornings it is enough." She read it back to herself once, and then closed the document. Spring came to Boston the way it always does. Reluctantly, then all at once. The Charles River shifting from gray to something almost blue. Iris and Owen ran the esplanade on Sunday mornings when the weather allowed. She was a better runner than he was and did not rub it in. He was better at standing still, and she was actively working on it. They had a fight in March about something that started as plans and became, briefly, about the older thing, about whether she was pulling back, whether the quiet she went into sometimes was avoidance or just quiet. She said it was quiet. He said he needed to be able to ask the question. She said he was allowed to ask. They sat with it for an evening and resolved it by the morning. This was new. In the previous version of them, a tension like that would have sent her into the particular internal weather that preceded leaving. This time she stayed in the room, literally stayed in his apartment, slept in his bed, woke up slightly raw and slightly okay, and by noon entirely okay. She told Dr. Sorrell about it the following week. Doctor Sorrell said, "How did it feel to stay in the room?" "Uncomfortable," Iris said. "And then just normal, like a muscle I'd forgotten I had." "That's what it is," Dr. Sorrell said. "Keep using it." By April, the same month she had left the second time, a year earlier, Iris was sitting on Owen's fire escape in the early evening, watching the Beacon Hill rooftops in the spring light, with a Starbucks cup going warm in her hands, and Owen somewhere behind her in the apartment, running water, the specific ordinary sounds of a life shared. She sat there and let herself feel it without measuring it. The light, the sounds, the particular temperature of the evening. Owen's voice saying something she couldn't quite hear, directed at her probably, comfortable in the assumption that she was close enough to answer. She was. There is no third leaving. No, there are hard mornings, and there are evenings when the old fear surfaces like weather, recognizable now, named, less powerful for being named. There are conversations that require more honesty than comes easily, and requires that she sit with discomfort rather than convert it into distance. But there is no third leaving. The townhouse on Rutland Square sold in February. Owen spent a week between projects, which was unusual for him. And during that week, he was around more than normal. In her apartment in the evenings, in her kitchen in the mornings. More present in the particular way that presence becomes visible, when it is consistent rather than occasional. She noticed. She did not panic. In March, he told her he had been asked to take on a new restoration, a 1910 school building in Brookline that had been vacant for 8 years and needed extensive work. He told her it would take 3 years, possibly 4. He told her this in the kitchen of her North End apartment on a Tuesday evening, with the specific casualness of someone sharing information they have been carrying for a while. "Okay," she said. He looked at her. "Okay," he said. "Yes," she said. "That sounds important. You should do it." He looked at her for a moment longer, the careful look, the one that was checking whether she was saying the surface thing or the real thing. She met it steadily. "Owen," she said, "I'm not going anywhere. Not a promise against fear, not a guarantee of perfection, not a claim to have solved herself completely, just the simple, declarative, grounded thing. I'm not going anywhere." He nodded once. Then he pulled her in and held her the way he held things he was careful with. Not tightly, not possessively, but with the particular attentiveness of someone who understands what they have. She rested her head against him. She rested. Outside, Boston in March was doing its transitional thing. Not quite winter, not quite spring, caught between what it had been and what it was becoming. She had lived in that in-between for 6 years. She was done living in it. She was here. Both feet. No door in sight. So that's the end of the story. And hey, if you're still here with us right now, I just want to say something to you directly. You didn't have to stay this long. But you did. And I think that means something in this story touched you. Maybe in a place you don't talk about much. Because Iris's story isn't really about a man who waited. It's about a woman who finally stopped running from the one thing she wanted most. And I think a lot of us know that feeling, not the leaving, but the fear underneath it. The fear that if someone sees us fully, really fully, they'll find a reason to go. Epictetus once said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." Iris couldn't control whether Owen stayed. She could only control whether she finally showed up, honestly, completely, without a door in sight. That's the whole lesson. Not bravery, not perfection. Just showing up and deciding that this time you're not leaving. If this story meant something to you today, please share it. Someone in your life might be standing at that same door right now. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. This video is a work of original fiction created entirely for storytelling and entertainment purposes. All characters, including Iris Calloway, Owen Slade, Derek Voss, and all others appearing in this story, are fictional. Any resemblance to real individuals, living or deceased, or to actual events, relationships, or locations, is purely coincidental. The themes explored in this story, including emotionally avoidant behavior, psychological manipulation in relationships, and the personal journey toward healing, are presented thoughtfully and responsibly, with the intention of encouraging empathy, self-reflection, and emotional growth in our audience. This channel does not fabricate real events, impersonate real people, or present fictional content as factual news or reporting. All stories published here are clearly labeled as fiction. Our commitment is to honest, meaningful storytelling that respects both our audience and the platform community guidelines. Thank you for watching, for your support, and for being part of this community. We are genuinely grateful you are here.